Air source heat pumps. Let's go cycling. So this heat pump cycle that we refer to, what do we actually mean? Well, a heat pump cycle is the refrigerant part of our process, and then that transfer from our refrigerant to our water system that enters our home. Now, the cycle consists of mainly 4 stages, which are pretty consistent across all heat pumps. So let's get to know this cycle a bit more and let's talk about the 4 stages. So let's break our air source heat pump refrigeration cycle down. Then when we break it down, we are going to break it down into 4 easy to follow key stages. Now, these stages are consistent across all types of air source heat pumps. Our first stage is evaporation. We are going to take the thermal energy from the air that surrounds our air source heat pump and transfer it to our second stage. That second stage is compression. We're going to take the refrigerant gas that leaves the evaporator. We're going to push it together, pushing the particles and the molecules closely together till they collide with each other, creating a kinetic energy which elevates both the pressure of the gas through the compression, but also superheats that refrigerant gas as well. So the first stage in our evaporator is all about boiling our refrigerant, because in some instances this refrigerant may be in liquid form. We cannot compress a liquid, we can only compress a gas. Now, when we talk about boiling this refrigerant, don't be confused with the water that's in your kettle. When we are talking about boiling, we are purely talking about taking a liquid and converting it to a vaporous state, a gas. So where it comes from our evaporator into our compressor, where it's squeezed, it then enters the third stage, our condenser. Now that's a plate heat exchanger where our refrigerant enters as a superheated, high pressure gas. We then extract the heat energy from that and transfer it into our water system, into our house. When the gas leaves the condenser, it's still a high pressure, but it is now a much lower temperature because we've stole that heat from it. The fourth stage is all about expansion. So our expansion valve will open and close in reaction to the demand on our gas. When it opens, it will alleviate the pressure, allowing it to return back to the evaporator, our first stage, as both low pressure and low temperature. It is a very simple yet effective cycle. Now, apologies to any of my esteemed heat pump peers and refrigeration experts. As we go through these videos, I might ever so slightly maneuver and manipulate these stages, so apologies ahead of time. Now, our heat pump sits in our garden. To get the thermal energy from the air that surrounds it, we need to drive it across the evaporator. How we do that is by using our fan. So our fan impeller, when there's a demand, will rotate in an anti-clockwise direction, pulling the air that surrounds our heat pump across the evaporator, boiling that refrigerant, slightly superheating it, and expelling cold, chilled air through the front because we're stealing that thermal energy. It's all about the effect of pressure on refrigerants. If we were to take air or a particle of air, within it there are a number of molecules. If we were to squeeze them, much like our refrigerant, they will collide with each other, creating this kinetic energy, a byproduct of that being temperature. Think about when you pump up your tyre at the garage and it starts to come up to the set pressure that you're looking for. If you were to feel the hose that's feeding the air into that tyre, you will feel that that hose is ever so slightly warm. It's purely because we are compressing that air. With refrigerant, the same thing's happening, only we have a vastly greater number of particles and molecules within that refrigerant. So, with the same pressure that we are putting under our air particle, we can get a much higher temperature from our refrigerant. So, it's a highly effective way of extracting energy. So, just to recap, the 4 stages. The first stage is capturing that energy. We're going to drive that ambient air across our evaporator, taking that thermal energy from it. The second stage is about compressing that refrigerant. So it's left the evaporator to stage 2, where we squeeze it together and we produce a hot refrigerant and usable heat, where it moves to our third stage, where we exchange it to the water system in our home. The last stage is all about expansion. So we've drove that air across, we've stole the heat energy from it, we are now expanding it where it returns and the cycle starts again. Let's look at it as a live graphic. As you can see here, the circuit is live. So we leave the first stage ever so slightly superheated, compress that refrigerant where we exchange it to our water system, stealing that heat energy from it, that useful energy, back to our fourth stage, which is expansion. So when you break it down into those 4 key stages, it actually is quite simplistic to follow.